Welcome to Get RevOps Right from Dysfunction to Holistic Scale. I'm your host, founder and CEO. This company started a company feeding of revenue 4 years ago with a mission to help small business owners scale their sales department. However, we had a wake-up call about 18 months into our journey. We started to acknowledge there was a stark difference in performance with our clients where we were building their sales departments for those that had a great brand, good marketing engine, and this thing called sales ops. In 2019, we started to become proficient in sales operations, started to learn about some of the best CRMs and technologies on the market. And by the end of 2019, we started to catch on to the new term being revenue operations, or RevOps for short. The challenge was back in 2019, and I think it's still a challenge today, is that people can't really define what RevOps is. And that is the start to what is causing the dysfunction in most organizations. Back in 2019, we went to market with an understanding that revenue operations would be the tech stack and operational process that aligned the customer lifecycle, starting when they're a buyer through the customer journey, with the way that the revenue teams were aligning the way they do work. So simply put, it's the tech stack and operational workflow of both the customer and the internal teams. And how do you align those? Well, we went to market with RevOps in 2020, and it was a year of learning. What we noticed is that most companies that we were engaged with were not willing to invest in this thing called RevOps. They didn't see the value. They couldn't define it. They never had anyone with that title on their staff. And so it was an unknown that they weren't willing to invest in. Thankfully, when we deployed it for them and they were able to see the significant returns by having a great RevOps function, they decided, hey, this is something we can't live without. Fast forward to 2021, we are seeing RevOps titles pop up all over LinkedIn. It's a blessing to see it. But the challenge is it is so poorly defined within corporations that one RevOps analyst or a RevOps specialist or a manager or director or a VP or whatever else word you want to put next to the word RevOps, there's a lack of consistency and congruency across companies and how you define it, who they report to, how their performance is measured, and unfortunately, it's still a bit of debacle. So today, I would like to tell you how you can take your RevOps function or your desire to start embarking in the world of RevOps and turn it into holistic scale, which is really what it's meant for. The mechanism, it's the back end, it's your revenue engine to set you on that journey. So let's dig in. One, what is RevOps? Well, we talked about that. It's a tech stack and operational workflow, aligning your customer with your internal teams, all revenue teams, and removing the barriers between departments. Who does RevOps report to? Well, the answer here is it depends. In an SMB or even mid-market company, I would love to see the CRO owning the RevOps function, meaning that whatever level of RevOps you have in your organization, that they do flow up to the CRO. If you have RevOps to a VP of sales or a VP of marketing, as an example, you're going to have some challenges because they're going to have bias for their function taking precedence over the other revenue departments. So our initial suggestion is that you're going to have RevOps aligning up to have a CRO, and you have two siloed heads being a head of marketing, a head of sales, and potentially that head of service. I would not put RevOps direct to one of those. I would actually put RevOps underneath a COO. Worst case, put them under a CFO, but be very careful because a CFO is not going to interpret how revenue operations really works and performs as best as an operational leader or ideally that chief revenue officer. Okay, so who do they report to? It depends. Depends on your size of company. It depends on the stage of growth that you're in. It depends on a lot of things, but hopefully that should give you some direction. Next is how do you leverage RevOps inside of your company? When you look at how most organizations view RevOps, it's very undefined. First thing is you have to get executive buy-in on what the heck RevOps is and how RevOps plans to be leveraged for what goals. Step number one is to define what is the desired outcome that you're looking to achieve by bringing RevOps into your world. Great. What are the outcomes? Here are some of the common things that we are looking. We look for holistic scale, meaning we're breaking down the barriers and we can have one clean funnel or path of conversion from all the traffic coming into your website, your brand, into your marketing funnel, from all the different attraction methods, all the way through the engagement, both that's being automated through marketing, but then automated through sales, also that's happening live with salespeople, through the conversion, through the purchase decision, getting them onboarded and getting them through that life cycle as a customer, being getting purchase, onboarding, getting them to adopt the technology or service, retain them, expand the revenue, and then turning them into that brand advocate. So let's talk about this in more detail. If your desired outcome is to scale revenue, one of the ways to achieve that is by breaking down the walls and barriers between departments. One of the most common ways is to get a single point of truth or a database. We are a HubSpot agency partner. We're crazy about the platform. We have been for the last 2.5 years. Here's what we love about it. We love that we can have one single record across where the CMS is built, attached to marketing, sales, and service. Now, HubSpot's not the answer for every corporation. There are great CRMs out there. But what we have found is HubSpot has so much functionality that you don't have to layer in a lot of other technologies. A great way to determine what your tech stack should be is first by doing a tech stack audit. And this is a key core function of your RevOps team. So if that desired outcome is breaking down the walls and barriers from a technology standpoint between your revenue departments, step number one would be to analyze what technology you have today. By doing an appropriate tech stack audit and identifying all the different technologies, their purpose, if there's any overlap in usage across the different technologies, you want to look if they're connected or not, if there's any manual data entry, any overlap. The challenge that you'll have with most tech stacks is that they've been purchased over time and potentially by different decision makers. So you had somebody come in that said, well, we have to have this if we're going to do this. But who really owned it? Who ensured that it was connected to the other technologies? Who built an SOP to train all the users on it? And who enforces the usage of it from an accountability standpoint? And who's monitoring if it's an effective technology getting great outcomes? Again, another thing that a great RevOps team can do for an organization. So our recommendation is to start with the tech stack audit, identify all the technologies you have, the expense for them, and then to evaluate team member usage, and then to look for any inefficiencies, unused seats, unused functionality, or potentially you need to upgrade and add on more functionality. Or maybe you're using a native piece of that technology, like an estimate, quote, or proposal tool. It's not meeting your needs. There are others on the market that you could easily integrate and layer on top. So that function of revenue operations is a key step in going from dysfunction to holistic scale. Somebody has to own the tech stack and truly understand how it's interconnected and works together from start to finish across the entire customer lifecycle, from the first touch point with your braid and marketing all the way through the funnel to getting the close, bringing them on board, and retaining them and through advocacy. So the next is the seamless integration with other business technologies. So I just mentioned connecting it all with the revenue tech stack. What about the other technologies in your organization? How about your email tool, a calendar tool, a web conferencing tool? What are you using for an ERP? How about billing? Do you have an inventory management system or other proprietary software that's required inside of your company? Well, if you have other technologies, even an overarching data analytics tool or business intelligence tool like Power BI, how are all of the other technologies connecting? One of the common problems that we see is even when an organization begins to adopt revenue operations and they pull it all together on how that data transfers to the other important technologies. Here's an example. If you're onboarding a customer and sales is required to gather a certain amount of data, where does the data go? Do you have an internal system, a proprietary system, or an ERP where sales takes the data out of the CRM and then they fill out a new client profile? Where does that information go? How does it get entered into the billing system for the accounting department? Does it need to go anywhere else? Well, thankfully, there's a lot of native sync tools and other third-party tools on the market where you can connect technologies through API and other integrations so that you are able to connect the data. This is another area that RevOps can help, and it's going to do things like reduce the amount of headache in your executive meetings when someone is trying to interpret data. If they're logging into a CRM that they don't spend a lot of time in and they're not sure how to navigate and look around, if you have these tools connected, they're going to be able to have visibility into data and metrics that matter, and it's going to help them make business decisions. Now, to recap what we've discussed, is RevOps is seen in a lot of organizations as this bright, shiny new role. Unfortunately, most companies can't define it. My recommendation is to start by truly understanding what RevOps is and defining how RevOps can be leveraged specifically inside of your company. What are the desired outcomes you're looking to achieve by having a RevOps role? From there, you can determine what types of RevOps roles do you need. Do you need technical support? Do you need more of a strategist or even someone at an executive level? Maybe you need all three. But the opportunity for you is to first define what is the outcome that we're looking to achieve, then back into it and say, what types of roles do we need to achieve the outcome? Filling in the details on the job description will be important, but key things to keep in mind, your new RevOps team members, or maybe your existing ones that are not loving their role right now because it's super undefined, is you can help them understand how they're held accountable, how their performance is measured, and honestly, there's room for growth and where they can go from here. Additionally, you need to have a strong feedback loop with your RevOps team and make sure that you are creating a communication pathway to truly understand how your tech stack is performing and how your team members are leveraging the current tech stack to ensure that you're getting the right return on investment. From there, once you define those roles and you bring those people in, it's important that the entire organization understands the value of RevOps. You should be communicating to all of your revenue teams the excitement around having a consolidated revenue approach. And with that, you can tee yourself up to holistic scale. But you need to set your RevOps team up for success by communicating to their counterparts or people, their teammates, people they're going to be working with on the different revenue teams, who RevOps is and who they're not. So they're probably not administrative assistants and dumping grounds to update the CRM. They should be seen as much more of a strategic partner in scaling the company. So with that, make sure you have the role defined, make sure the teams that they're going to be working with truly understand their role and they can be valued in that. Ultimately, when you get this structure in place, you're going to be able to break down the barriers between your revenue departments, be able to roll out that one holistic revenue strategy, and ultimately the goal will be that together you can work collectively to scale. And that, my friends, is how you unleash your revenue potential with revenue operations. Thank you.